Greetings, this is Griff Roby with my review of Isaac Asimov's novel, Gods Themselves. Yes, this is the Gods Themselves, and no, it isn't your screen getting funny or matching the colors. That's just the way the cover looks. So, that's the back, that's the edge. Now, Asimov had not written any new novels basically since the 1950s. He had written a smattering of short stories that would be gathered up into such books as The Rest of the Robots, Nightfall and Other Stories, Asimov's Mysteries, By Jupiter, and other collections and so forth. But it was just a very thin smattering of stories. Once he decided to switch over from writing fiction to writing fact, nonfiction in any case, the novels stopped, and the short stories, they didn't totally stop, but they did trail off to a very thin trickle over the years. So, with the one lone exception, and perhaps we'll get to that as the next thing to do, a novelization of Fantastic Voyage, which of course exists as a movie. But Asimov really had no real responsibility for the story itself. It was pretty much dictated by the script of the movie. He had some wiggle room that he could use to try to make the science aspect of it a little less obviously ridiculous, but that was about all he could do, and just tell the story and write a book for it. But that's not his own novel, so it's like from his standpoint that barely even counts. And so that had been it. I think part of it was is that he'd come to think of himself as being a bit of a dinosaur. He had written stuff that was great for the 1950s, but now the 60s and now the 70s are coming, and his days passed. He wrote great stuff in the 40s and 50s, and he could just stand on that, and stand on all the nonfiction he writes. That, of course, is really good. But he does mention that certain circumstances did bring about that he might end up writing. It's a novel-ish because it's really 3 short stories. Well, novelettes actually, somewhat longer. And I'll just read what he said here, or what someone said on his behalf. If, during a duologue on science fiction in January 1971, these mark the date, Robert Silverberg had not happened to mention an impossible isotope, plutonium-186, and if Isaac Asimov had not happened to be in the audience to hear him, then he wouldn't now be on to the first publication anywhere of The Gods Themselves, a profoundly wise novel beginning in this issue of Galaxy, virtually on the anniversary of the remark that launched it. If the companion magazine of Galaxy will carry part 2 of The Gods Themselves in order to enable us to make available to you the entire work before hardcover publication, and also for another and deeper reason. You and I live on the edge of imponderables, and each move we make, or fail to make, creates circumstances that never existed before. Usually these remain unnoticed, or at least unsung, unless our 2 worlds either jostle or join, or we find ourselves poised over an abyss of our own making. Then, suddenly, if can become the longest word in language. The Gods Themselves came to be written, by the author's own account, because he felt challenged to put plutonium-186 to work, once the unworkable concept had been introduced, against all laws of earthly science. The project began as a short story, but as it unfolded, Dr. Asimov found that he had to create a whole new universe to contain the outlaw chemical. Part 2 of the book is set entirely in this alternate or parallel universe, where you and I would be as impossible as plutonium-186 is in the cosmos we inhabit. Dr. Asimov's para-universe is meticulously based in solid science, though nothing in it obeys the laws of our cosmos. So that section truly belongs in If, the magazine of alternatives, which is governed by laws of imagination as valid as the human mind. Part 3, on the other hand, which is again ruled by the science of our cosmos, though not exactly that of Earth, pretty close actually, the moon as we come to see, will appear in the next issue of Galaxy, a magazine similarly ruled. So what am I reading from? Well, needless to say, most of his early novels had been serialized in various science fiction magazines. In fact, I think Pebble in the Sky and The End of Eternity, and also his, I think I reviewed it too, the Whiff of Death, I think are about the only ones that weren't serialized. Well, Lucky Stars weren't serialized, but that barely counts anyway. But, I mean, The Stars Like Dust was serialized as Tyran in Pages of Galaxy. The Caves of Steel was serialized also on Galaxy. The Naked Sun was serialized in Astounding Science Fiction. One other. Yeah, The Currents of Space were also serialized in Astounding Science Fiction. And in fact, as it turns out, even his Fantastic Voyage was serialized in Saturday Evening Post. But that trend was continuing, and he was working at this time with a magazine, well, actually two, that came from the same publishing house and were very closely connected. One being Galaxy, the other being If. Now, so this really is the very first publication of the gods themselves. It starts on the page of Galaxy for the first part, which is in our universe. The second part takes place in this alternate universe, very different physical laws, so a lot very imaginative. And then finally the conclusion returns back to our universe, and the only thing is, in the first we're on the Earth, and here we're on the Moon. So we kind of looked at three worlds, two of which are obviously fairly closely related to each other, and the third, the other one in the middle actually, is a very, very different world. And that's part of the interest and probably the key fascination. It happens, the middle section of the gods themselves is probably the one part Asimov himself was most proud of, and I guess with some measure of justification, because someone had come to him and basically said, well, or someone had said in print somewhere, Asimov didn't have much imagination. His stories tended to shy away from a lot of heavy-duty human behaviors, I'll just say. And some said, well, he just couldn't imagine these kinds of things. And so he couldn't really come up with convincing aliens or come up with something that was an unusual way these aliens would live. And it was like he felt he had to rise to that challenge. I think he did. He concocted a universe. The laws are so different that the chief intelligent life form existing in that universe has three genders. Okay. Now, of course, every life form that we're familiar with in this world, either has one gender, like some amoebas and other life forms that just reproduce asexually, they just divide and multiply by division. Can you square by taking square roots? Anyway, they multiply by division. They divide themselves and thereby multiply their numbers. Or two genders, or at least couples. Like if you had two paramecium, it's not clear whether there's a meaningful difference between these genders, but they're combining, sharing the genetic material. And of course, the male-female thing that runs through all, every insect we know of, even plants have, male, female parts, though sometimes it might be combined on one plant or not. So, but what if you had three genders? And this is what they do in the middle. So that's kind of a key part, but let's back up a little bit. In the first part, we meet a fellow by the name of Peter Lamont. And what has happened is they've come up with this marvelous invention, and is the story of that a little bit, that basically replaces all those other very inefficient methods of creating energy. That's a big problem. It was a problem then, it's still a problem now. How do you create enough energy for all the stuff that it takes to keep us alive? because we don't just need food anymore. We don't just need shelter. We need energy. We need electricity. Electricity to get ourselves about here and there. Drive our cars, fly our planes, ship our food, all kinds of stuff. We use energy in lots of ways. Heat our homes, and of course all electronic gewgaws we use. Those things won't work without electricity. So we need energy. So suddenly here's this marvelous thing called the electron pump. And what it does is you have this, you just get tungsten, get the element now. But anyway, you have an element of, let's start right here at the beginning here. Okay, well, electron pump. Plutonium 186 to, what is the other 186? Tungsten, yeah, there's tungsten 186. And the idea is tungsten 186 is a perfectly reasonable, stable isotope of tungsten in this world, in this universe. The idea is you could have parallel universes where the laws differed because, let's say, the constants differed. So Avogadro's numbers, Max Planck's constants, the gravitational constant, the strength, and most relevant here, the strength of the strong nuclear force. Apparently you could conceive a universe where these sorts of numbers would be different than they are in the universe as we know it. So there'd be this other universe, the beings in the other universe are also getting energy, all based on the fact that the two universes have these different laws. Because in their universe, because they have a much strong nuclear force than we do, plutonium 186 would be a stable isotope in their universe, where it is not in ours. In fact, a thing like that would destroy itself immediately. But what's happening is, somehow, when you introduce plutonium 186 from their world into ours, it seems to bring the laws, this part's not well explained, okay, somehow it brings the laws of the universe with it for a while, and actually will be stable at first, but then it slowly and gradually becomes less and less stable, and as it does so, it releases heat energy or some form of energy that can be turned into electricity by some mechanism. And finally, it decays into the stable tungsten 186. And once it's the stable tungsten 186, you just take that, and somehow the people from the other universe have the means to grab that, and replace it with more of their plutonium 186. And in their universe, the tungsten 186 is unstable and will really, takes our laws universe, the laws of our universe with it for a while, and it will slowly become, as it requires the laws of their universe, and do more of the getting more unstable until it decays back to plutonium. So it's kind of like you have a river that flows uphill in both directions. They actually mentioned somebody writing an article with that title of the story. And that's really kind of what you have in here. Except, obviously, there has to be something that gives. Entropy is still with us. And indeed, the problem of entropy runs through this thing very, very much. Because you have to come up with energy somehow. And what's it going to be? What are you going to use? So, in this case, you're bending the laws of the universe. By bringing stuff from the other universe into our universe, and vice versa, our universe starts slowly acquiring the laws of their universe. So these constants are now actually changing a little bit. They're tweaking. And their universe gets affected by the laws of our universe. So their constants are also tweaking just a little bit too. And the thing about it is, the way it goes, if their constants tweak too much, their sun loses some of its heat, some of its intensity. It might eventually just become a dead cold planet. But if they've got this pump at their end, I guess at their end they call it a positron pump, they'd be all right. They can just use the pump and that'll be fine. We at our end have a somewhat bigger problem because our sun would get hotter and it might reach a threshold fairly soon where suddenly it just gets hotter and hotter, goes out of control, and explodes. And what's worse, it could happen fairly soon. But the problem is, It's already been created. It's already been established. We're 20 years down the line since the discovery that made all this possible, and now everybody's using this cheap power. I mean, it's like what nuclear power promised to be. You know, electricity too cheap to meter. Yeah, right. You get the marvel with the, I don't know, hubris, ignorance, what? The people who could say, yeah, we're going to have electricity that's just too cheap to meter. Well, but this, I guess, would be something that would be too cheap to meter. That's the idea. But they're starting to worry, well, now, wait a minute. This could be screwing up the physical laws in our universe, and this could cause, and especially in our immediate solar system area, and this could cause our sun to explode, and probably not after not all that many years. Now, I kind of see behind this thing as an environmental issue. You know, it's sort of, you could almost compare it in a way to global warming. Is this thing going on or not? It doesn't seem to be going on. Are we responsible? We're undeniably a factor, large or small. I'm not sure, but you know. Is the planet as a whole getting warmer? Some of the cold days we've had lately, it doesn't seem that way, but you know, meanwhile the ice caps are melting and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, I think the concern is real, but what do they want to do about it is another bucket of bananas. So it kind of comes down to the question: what are you going to do? You know, we need the stuff. Life has to go on. And here you got a world that's had this basically free energy. It doesn't, you know, it's even better than nuclear because you don't even have to deal with nuclear waste. Wow, this is great. You know, except you're tweaking the laws of the universe, of this universe, in a way that will cause the sun to explode in, I don't know, maybe 10 to 50 years or something. Who knows? That's the only problem. Other than that, it's great. It's free. It doesn't. You know, it doesn't cost much other than the facilities to, you know, capture the energy generated and, you know, put it in the usual infrastructure we have for distributing power. And that's really about all it costs. So that's really great. So that runs through the motif of all that. Now, in the second part, we are, of course, dealing with this alternate universe. We've got these beings of three genders. Now, we meet in particular one main triad, a family of OD. Now, how do you have three genders? Asimov solution is kind of interesting. These beings survive by sunlight. So as long as there's sunlight, that's their food. So I guess they're kind of like an intelligent plant in a way. But the different genders need it differently. Let me introduce the genders. We have Odin, who's what's called the rational, and the rationals are the ones that are the real brains of the outfit. They're really intelligent. They're the ones that go to school, learn, that develop, that plan. You know, they really see to all the great needs of society and so forth, and do all the great achievements. And the next gender you have is called the parental, and that would be Trit. And the parental is very simple-minded. It really does two things. One, it wants to make children, and two, it wants to raise them. Okay, well, I guess that's a fair and reasonable package deal. So that's Trit. And then the third member, probably easily the star of our triad in this case, is what's called the emotional. And the emotional is really what empowers and brings most of the energy to the other two, and especially in breeding, because apparently a lot of energy is involved in making a new one of these beings. So they have little rational children, little parental children, and little emotional children. Usually they seem to come in that order. Sometimes you can have a couple of sets, though that doesn't seem to be very common in this story. But they kind of relate. It's kind of interesting to see how they relate and how they function together as a family group. And of course, this gets into a lot of the detail. And now this is where things get a little, dicey. And it's interesting, okay, to see what kind of family life you could construct. but at the same time, it gets into some of the stuff there. In one sense, it's very anthropomorphic because, I mean, among humans, there's all kinds of stuff that we relate, especially to the whole world of procreation and all that. We have all these taboos and guilt and conflicts and this and that are all kind of part of how the whole thing works with us. Whereas with these beings, all of that is stunningly a little too similar. I mean, these are supposed to be completely alien beings, and yet they're going through decidedly human, all of it, taboos and desires and all of it, which makes it, I don't know, you could almost regard it as kind of pornographic in a exobiological sense. But it's kind of tied into a family life. I mean, but you get three characters that kind of all relate to each other, and each of them is kind of amazing in their own way. And in particular, the emotional is unusually rational for an emotional. Most emotions just want to lay out in the sun and gather huge amounts of sunlight because they need a whole lot more than the rationals or the parentals. And that's most of their whole existence, apparently, and chattering among themselves like so many, sisters in a sorority. But this particular emotional enjoys hearing about the rational stuff, enjoys learning things just kind of like the rational. She's the student, but she enjoys hearing about it. She enjoys learning, whereas the parental is just, I have no idea what you're talking about, nor do I care. Let's make a baby. I got to take care of the baby. That's for parental. So, but this emotional discovers that they're doing this pump, but she figures out that if they continue this, the world is going to blow up for whoever's giving them this tungsten 186. And but there'll be this big supernova on that side, and we'll just draw energy directly from that. So what? Well, but there's beings here. You don't want to hurt these beings. And she managed to get a message kind of back, stop the pump. No, stop. Don't stop pump. So, but it turns out when these beings grow up, after they've had their family life as kind of sort of we would know it, then they all combine permanently into one new being, and it's like it kind of synthesizes all of them together as one real person. And now we move back to the third part, and in the third part we are on the moon. And by the way, there's an awful lot of description on the moon of how people keep themselves, get exercise and things, and stay in shape on the low gravity of the moon. These are some acrobatics described in the story, by the way, on the cover. And now we're dealing with Peter Lamont is a very small role, but he's kind of there distantly in the background. Another person by the name of Dennison, that's kind of barely mentioned in the first part, is the main player. And they try to solve the problem of, at first it started with trying to stop the electron pump because we don't want the sun to blow up. Well, they find another solution. And the solution is, can there really just be two universes? Maybe there can be any number of universes. You can connect to a universe that, or they at least connect to us from another universe where these constants have one different set of values. Maybe there's some other universe where the constants have yet other different values, and if we can just connect ourselves to those, on the other side, then we could be, no longer, we could be tweaking our laws back into normal, and then some other universe down the way wouldn't have to worry about it. So it kind of goes to show that, there ends up being a solution. Like, you're not going to solve our current energy crunch or carbon or global warming by saying, well, let's destroy all the internal combustion engines, and then you go to the store and you discover there's nothing on the grocery shelves because all the lettuce is grown 3 states away, and the chickens are grown 6 states away, and the bananas come from another country, and all of a sudden there's just no way to get all that stuff everywhere. If you live in an apple orchard, you eat a lot of apples. If you want meat, maybe you might catch a rabbit wandering among the orchard. That's about it. Is that really what we want to go back to? We can't live that way. Certainly not 7 billion people now. And that's, you want to kill off lots and lots of billions of people. You might do the planet a favor, but it's all. Who are you gonna kill? Who are you gonna kill to bring this nice thing about, huh? So that's they can solve all this thing. And reading it the first time, I really couldn't see how it connected very much with the first, except that you had some characters from the first part, and the concern was still there. Entropy, energy. How do we get energy in an entropy galaxy? And it finally comes about that I finally realized that apparently the combined being from the second part found some way to intuitionally convey the idea to people in our world to try to go to the other side. This was so that they could keep their pump going. We would also be, and now we wouldn't be killed off. We'd have our pump going. So we solved it for everybody. I think it's a good solution. It also goes to show that what really is needed in our bigger concerns of the world and saving the planet and all that kind of stuff, isn't a bunch of laws designed to gouge everybody into grinding poverty, until we care so little about our own, we can't even fix our own tiny corner of the world, forget about the rest of the planet. That's no solution. But what is going to be the solution is finding new ways of the energy and the things that energy does for us that are actually practical. That really should be the priority. And if we just focus on that, then we don't worry. Then we don't bring these gloom and doom destinies upon ourselves. So there's a whole lot of that. Peter Lamont in the first part struggles against a body of scientists who just won't listen to him because everybody's got too much invested in having this thing going. I think we've kind of seen that it's more complicated. I mean, nowadays we got a society invested in all the things that we do that create carbon emissions, and we really can't meaningfully cut them down very much without new technology and ideas and so forth. That's really should be the priority. If you care about this stuff, and it's good that people do, that's the direction that needs to be taken. Not, well, let's all go back to this organic stuff that was great for a planet that had only 500 million humans on it, but it's absolutely unworkable now. So there's but there also comes to be a scientific it almost becomes a self-propagating thing of, well, let's get more taxes for the environment. How are we going to spend it? On finding ways to create even more taxes. This is going to fix the environment? Well, people might drive their cars a little less, but I don't, basically, but there's not a lot of energy we consume. It's discretionary, and you really hurt a lot of people's lives in a way. So it's a tough call, but you see how these are very good and real problems, and from that standpoint, there's a lot of very real interest in this novel. Well, I think I could definitely say a lot more, but I'm really running way overdue here, so I'm gonna cut it off here. So it's an interesting read. Read some with caution, but the aspects of the science and the energy and the entropy are very interesting. The three-gender family life is, definitely creative. Asimov succeeded in creating genuinely alien beings with a genuinely alien manner of propagation. So, and it comes across consistent and credible even, which is, that is an accomplishment one does have to respect. Whatever aspects of it are, probably not all that I care for myself. I've always been a prissy prude myself, I don't really care for a lot of that stuff, but the cleverness just seems to more than make up for it. Anyway, that's enough.